Hey y'all, while the toolbox has been working great, I'm starting to collect more odds and ends in it. So today we're going to add some more storage to it to help keep those smaller tools safer than just floating around in the bottom of the box. The first thing we need to build is something like a pencil holder for these small tools. I measured out just over 3 inches on this scrap piece of Paduk and then clamped and cut it. I then repeated that a few more times to get all the side pieces. The Paduk was left over from the initial build, so we're going to use it so that it matches all the other holders already inside the toolbox. I cleaned up the sides to make sure they're all square, as we're going to essentially be making 2 small boxes, so anything not at a right angle will be noticeable. I then measured out one to find the halfway point, and then clamped and cut a few of them to complete the rectangle structure. I then needed to add a 45-degree miter to each one of these pieces so that the rectangle boxes will look good when pieced all together. Laying the pieces out, I used 2 3-inch pieces and 2 1.5-inch pieces per box. Seeing some of these were not straight, a few quick passes on the plane got the odd edges back into alignment. This tape trick really is the best way to get good clean edges on a miter box glue up, as long as you make sure each piece is tight on the tape to really give that good clamping effect. These aren't show pieces, so I added a lot of glue, and then I went back after putting the pieces together and wiped out the excess with a rag. The second box went together the same way as the first. But after I taped and glued, I noticed one of my sides was a little long, throwing off the box shape. A quick disassembly and a few passes with the hand plane, and it was ready to go back together. This time the rectangle turned out great. After they dried, one of the boxes needed a bottom on it to hold the tools in it. So I flattened one side with some sandpaper, and then I glued in a bottom section, a little oversized for it just to make sure the whole bottom was covered. Once that dried, it was time for a full sanding. To mount these pieces, I'm going to use screws like with all the other holders in case I want to change up how things are stored in the future. After drilling the mounting holes, I attempted to add a countersink, and then these were going to be ready for mounting. The second holder I'm going to make is for my block plane. I had this space between my coping saws and chisels that isn't really used for anything, so something small to hold this tool would be best here. The space does work well for my mallet handle as well, so we're going to go above it with the plane resting on its side. Doing that should help lock it in place so it won't easily fall out as well. After marking and cutting a piece of the Paduk to the size I need, I outlined the shape of the plane and then went through and outlined the entire area I was going to remove with my chisel. I started out gently, trying to make sure I set the line and remove the top layer of wood, then would go back through and reset the lines deeper to continue cutting it out. For Christmas, my wife got me this router plane, so I figured this would be a good time to give it a try. It was super simple to get used to, but I was having trouble figuring out how to hold the piece as it kept sliding out of the clamps. So I switched to clamping a different piece of wood to really just act as a plane stop. A few key learnings from the first time using this is really don't be too aggressive when you're lowering that blade for a deeper cut. Small increments are really what's needed to keep that finished surface nice and smooth, and to make sure you have a flat surface to run it on. You'll see here that I keep a scrap piece of wood to the side of it to help balance out the plane, so I can really just focus on keeping the pressure down and not worry about the side to side. This is where I start to get a little jealous of the folks here on YouTube that have workbenches with devices and the bench dogs attached, so you can just clamp small pieces of wood like this from both sides, but that's something for a future workbench. And after a while, the block plane fits like a glove. Now to mount this, I'm going to use screws as well, but the screws aren't nearly long enough to go all the way through this. So I used a Forstner bit with a head wider than the head of the screw to really open up a hole about halfway through the board on both sides. Then I made a design choice to go ahead and cut off the corners on both sides as well. After that, I added a countersink and sanded the piece through the grits before it was ready to be mounted as well. To mount this holder, all I did was mark where I want it to be, then pre-drilled and screwed in one side, and then repeated the step for the other. Simple enough. To mount the small tool holder, I marked the center of that side of the board and then made sure the bottom holder was high enough to not interfere with the hand plane handhold. I marked and pre-drilled for the screw and then screwed it in, making sure to strip the screw as much as possible so that when I take this out one day it'll be extremely aggravating. I then put in the tools to find the right height for the top section and then repeated the process. Once done, I added a coat of tung oil to match the rest of the box, and then it was time to add the tools. The block plane fit in snugly, no chance of that falling out accidentally. And the small tool holder ended up great, holding all my small items and keeping them up off the bottom of the box. That's going to be it for this build. If you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next project. Thanks!